Congratulations to Lando Norris. He is the 2025 Formula One Drivers' World Champion. It was a very interesting ride for him this year in 2025, and at the halfway point of the season, it looked pretty much certain that it was going to be Oscar Piastri. He was looking absolutely incredible. And then after the engine failure that Lando Norris had after the summer break at the Dutch Grand Prix, it looked as though it was going to be Oscar Piastri. Nobody could come back after that, surely. He can't pick himself up after that, can he? Well, he did. He did. He's had a lot of setbacks. He had the Canadian Grand Prix crash, of course. That was an embarrassing moment for him. He had all those mistakes. He had a crash in the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix qualifying as well. Had the terrible pit strategy at the Qatar Grand Prix, the disqualification at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Norris had a lot of setbacks he's had to overcome, and in the end, he is Formula One World Champion. And I'm sure there's going to be some people out there that saying, oh, the worst Formula One World Champion ever. Doesn't matter, he did it. He won it. Simple as that. The record book says that he won it, and he won it in the end. And if only all of Max Verstappen's fans could be as graceful as Max Verstappen himself after the Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi. But what were the 5 big moments, of course, this season where Lando Norris stamped his authority on the Formula One World Championship and proved decisive in getting him the title? Let's have a look. So we're going to start in the season opening Australian Grand Prix. McLaren came into it as the heavy favourites, and they very much lived up to that billing in qualifying, getting 1-2, where Lando Norris led Oscar Piastri on the front row of the grid. Norris was superb during this Grand Prix, and it was in very tricky, wet conditions, of course, throughout it. Very difficult race to open the season, and of course, this being the first time these guys had actually raced their cars. They'd driven them in testing. This is the first time they've actually raced them, and the rookies in particular, of course, struggled around this track, a lot of them crashing out, but even more experienced drivers like Carlos Sainz also struggled in this race. I think Fernando Alonso also failed to finish, another rookie that didn't finish in the Australian Grand Prix this year. But Lando Norris did finish. He converted his pole into victory, a dominant drive in the end for him. Unfortunately though for McLaren, it was not a 1-2, it was a 1-9 in the end. The curse of Aussies in the home race continued as Oscar Piastri spun out, but he did manage to recover it and finish the race in 9th position, getting a couple of points. Now that could have proved crucial for Piastri, but that big point swing, that's a 23-point advantage to open the season. It did, of course, melt away. Of course, Oscar Piastri took the lead of the championship, I think, after Saudi Arabia. And it took a long time for Lando Norris to win another race. Max Verstappen won some races in Japan and Emilia-Romagna. And Oscar Piastri got an absolute string of victories in the likes of China and also Bahrain and Saudi. But it was Monaco where Lando Norris managed to get his second victory of the season. Yes, people will say, oh, he only won it because he got pole position. He got pole position though, didn't he? He got pole position. Getting pole position around Monaco is almost as good as a win because it does convert it into a win most likely on Sunday. And so it proved, and that was a big confidence boost for him. Although, of course, what happened in Canada happened a couple rounds later, but it still gave him some vital points there. And Oscar Piastri didn't manage to finish in second. That was, of course, Leclerc who finished second on that day. Oscar Piastri got third. That's a 10-point swing. That made the difference. Remember, in the end, it was only 2 points between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris at the top of the championship. And indeed, it was just 13 back to Oscar Piastri as well. These little points differences make a big difference. And now let's talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix. This was a really interesting one between these two, doing 2 different strategies. Lando Norris doing the 1-stop and Oscar Piastri doing the 2-stop in this one, and it was the 1-stop that proved to be quicker. Now, of course, Oscar Piastri was quicker. He was absolutely on it like a car bonnet in the closing stages, trying to pass his teammate. He made a really good lunge as well, of course, but overtaking around Hungary, around the Hungaroring is very, very difficult, particularly if you're fighting against a car that is exactly the same as the one you are driving as well. And so it proved, that track position proved key. Again, there'll be some people saying, oh, Lando Norris got the favourable strategy there. Well, it seemed as though the 2-stop was going to be quicker. That's what most people did. But Lando Norris decided to gamble and do something different. No one would have batted an eyelid if it didn't work out. But the fact that it worked out, people are crying foul very much on that one. Again, the fans of some Formula One drivers are just downright pathetic, but that is the sport we are in nowadays. Credit to Lando Norris, he was on really worn out tyres and he drove superbly in those closing stages to hold off Oscar Piastri. He didn't need to hold off Oscar Piastri though in Mexico. I mean, this was one of 2 back-to-back victories that were absolutely incredible. I mean, the winning margin that Lando Norris had in Mexico was downright incredible. He was so quick during that weekend. Brilliant in Mexico, brilliant in Brazil in a week's time after that as well, but fantastic in Mexico, and just really just laid down his authority on the Formula One field at that point. It looked as though, yeah, this guy's being champion. Lando Norris is absolutely 100% being champion. But what happened in Las Vegas and Qatar very much did put some doubt there in that and made it a 3-way title fight going into Abu Dhabi. But let's just talk about Mexico for a quick second here. Oscar Piastri didn't have a good weekend that weekend, ended up classifying down in 5th place. That's a 15-point swing. That is the difference between Lando Norris winning the championship, and if Oscar Piastri won the race instead, he would have won the World Championship. So that all makes the big difference there. But yeah, season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. 3rd place, not exactly spectacular in the grand scheme of things, but he knew going into this race that if he did finish in 3rd, no one could catch him. Max Verstappen dominated the race, dominated the weekend, didn't matter in the end. He fell just short, unfortunately, for him. And Lando Norris, he got overtaken by Oscar Piastri, who was on the harder tyre, the slower tyre supposedly at the time, but because Lando Norris knew that if he finished 3rd, he'd be fine. He'd win the World Championship. Didn't really fight it. Let Piastri go. He did just enough to hold off the likes of George Russell and Charles Leclerc in this Grand Prix as well. They were very much trying to overtake him here. They were not giving him an easy time at all. But in the end, Lando Norris won, and he becomes the latest Formula One World Champion. But can he back it up next year? Can he win the title next year in 2026? Well, we'll have to wait and see, guys. Get your thoughts in the comments below. The deserved champion of 2025? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. Personally, for me, driver of the season probably is Max Verstappen for how he came back, how Red Bull came back in the latter stages. But in the end, Lando Norris is champion. So we'll see what happens when we resume Formula One next year. But plenty of content happening in the off-season for you guys to go through. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more like this. Have a fantastic day wherever you're on the world today, and we'll see you very soon.